Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. This is Energy Speaks Back, powered by B2B Energy. My name is Paul Webb. I'm the founder of B2B Energy, and I'm your host. Each week, I bring to you energy experts from around the world. This is episode 167. Our purpose, as always, is to provide a good understanding of energy management knowledge from around the world, which is available today for us to deliver savings that impact on our planet. Welcome, energy enthusiasts, to another enlightening episode of Energy Speaks Back, where I delve deep into our guests' origin and their knowledge within our industry. Please engage with comments and the poll after the episode. Today I'm thrilled to interview an expert in the insulation sector who provides a valuable service to his industry. He is the technical director of a trade association called TICA, the Thermal Insulation Contractors Association. So without any further ado, let's wrap up, keep warm, and get stuck into the technical aspects of insulation with Chris Ridge. Afternoon, Chris. How are you today?
Good afternoon, Paul. Yeah, I'm fine. Thank you very much. Yeah. It's a nice dry day and it's all
Very.
sunny and good. Yeah,
And I
thank you.
hesitated there because I said good afternoon just as you were slurping your coffee. So I'm sorry about that.
Yeah, the last one of the day, I think. Yeah, the last one of the day. Yes.
So, Chris,
Yeah.
we've been chatting via sort of LinkedIn, and then we've met, haven't we? We've had a couple of or a Zoom call and a chat offline and online.
Yeah.
So we know about
Yeah.
you, some of your background, but for the benefit of our audience today, can you give us your background and your origin story to what brings you into the energy sector today?
Yeah, sure. So I think we've probably circled around each other a little bit with various contacts on LinkedIn and such like. And I've done some work with some other people that you've interviewed in the past. Vilnius being one, Jeremy Carter, and I've spoken to him quite a bit recently as well. And then Pritesh Mistry, most recently with T&M Supplies. So yeah, this is a conversation I think that hopefully sort of builds on some of the others you've
Brilliant.
had. But yeah, so to answer the specific question, so my background, it's I don't think anybody finds themselves uh, going a direct route into thermal insulation, shall we say. And I actually started out, my first real job was working with the MEB, which was the old electricity board
Yeah, yeah.
back in the day. And I was actually working in the offices, and I was studying for this degree as well with them. And I actually at the end of that had the opportunity then to do um, out and about with the engineers and learning from them. And I think if that would have followed its natural conclusion, then I could see myself in a engineering role within the electricity board. But what happened in true British fashion with privatisation and such like, I was working for the contracting organisation that got took over a couple of times, and then I actually ended up I had a choice between either. Taking an office only job and looking at things like technical drawings for high voltage networks and things like that, or actually keeping my company car as it was then, or trying to keep into a sales position where I could actually retain a company car and things like bonuses. And I actually decided I had an opportunity to take redundancy, and I left and went into the world of sales.
Right.
And I actually then circled back round into the construction market from there, working for a company called Erico, who are construction fixing and support products. So working on the mechanical side, things like pipe fixings and those kind of things. So
Hmm.
and then from there, I joined Kingspan, and that was introducing me to the world of thermal insulation. And I was at Kingspan for probably about 10 years. I joined Tika about 4 years ago now, and it was really with wanting to circle back more around to a technical role and to try and do something a little bit different. There's a lot going on, as we know, in the in the whole construction market and in the energy sector, and felt like the right time for me to try and make a difference with that.
And what does TICA stand for?
It's the Thermal Insulation Contractors Association.
Right.
So we are the sole trade association for thermal insulators in the UK. It's it's a trade that I guess encompasses, well, it encompasses both what people would think of your traditional HVAC roles, so the follow-on trades from people installing the pipe work and the duct work in large construction projects, but it also encompasses that whole energy sector and petrochemical sector side of things as well. So large multidisciplinary contractors working on could be offshore, it could be a petrochemical, all that kind of stuff. So we've got quite a broad range of members, but essentially it's for people insulating pipe work, duct work, and vessels, not your
So
building
it's the
insulation.
installers and the installation guys, not the manufacturers of this. Is that right, or is it both?
It is a little bit of both because we have associate members as well.
Right.
So manufacturers and distributors of insulation
Got you.
equipment can join TICA as an associate member. And actually, what we've become is I think the marketplace for everybody involved in thermal insulation, the place where people can join and have those conversations. So that's become quite an important aspect of what we do. So whilst our full members have to be our key concern, those contractors of all shapes and sizes that are insulating with thermal insulation, then it's really important. Actually, it marries up to the fact that we do have to have those conversations with the manufacturers and the distributors and make sure that everybody understands that we're all singing from the same hymn sheet effectively.
Yeah.
So that's becoming more
Interestingly,
important.
though, you was giving me the impression that you was like electrical engineering with the energy company previously. Is that right? And then you've sort of transitioned into mechanical, or what? How did that work? What was your
Yeah,
background in that way?
so I effectively what I did, to be honest, Paul, was once I finished my degree, I kind of pressured my bosses as much as they would let me, and said, "Well, I've got my degree now. I'm in the office doing all this stuff and all these quotes for you guys that are out and about in the substations, and what can I do next?" So they gave me a car, they gave me a set of keys, they gave me all the training so I could access substations and know what I should and shouldn't touch and all the rest of it. And it was a really interesting time because it opened my eyes to a lot of different industries. That was my first real understanding of what happens behind behind the front of housing. Obviously, a lot of places where you'll have a lot more experience, but hotels and office blocks and things like that. But it also opened my world to uh, if you like, the very changing industry of the real high end industrial manufacturing processes that were out there. A lot of these companies would have maybe uh, four or five substations on site because the amount of power they were using.
Yeah.
So energy saving was really, really, I think, just getting quite important for them. But it was also at the time that I was seeing a lot of people that were trading. I can remember some of the old foundries in the Black Country area, and I saw in my time at MEB a lot of them became housing estates and things like
Right.
that. So, uh, and 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 it was a really really interesting job. Unfortunately, the contracting business was surplus to requirements when the Americans took over for a while. Then a European company took over the supply side and the distribution side of the whole kind of electricity board was split off into different
Yeah.
factions, and
Fragmented
it
it.
was a case of either
Yeah.
stay and lose my car and go into the office. So it was a case of going into the world of sales. So the opportunity to carry on in that, I had to make the choice really to carry on in that route or just go into the world of sales and
Yeah.
see what was there. And
And then
so
who did MEB get gobbled up by in the end?
oh, so I mean, there was. there was an American company. I can't even remember. It was an acronym. It was an American company that initially took it over. They became a company called Aquila, and then it kind of got divided out between. So the supply side, I think, got took over by EDF. Again, it was Empower initially, actually, and I think
Right.
and later it became EDF. And the supply distribution, sorry, the distribution side, the people actually owning and operating the high voltage networks, became Western Power,
Ah, yeah, yeah,
and
yeah, yeah.
so all of these things begin to move around. So it was an interesting background, both in
Mm.
understanding how other businesses operated, but seeing what happens when, yeah, well, privatization happens and when businesses change. I actually did my degree in my dissertation for my business degree on company culture and looked at three facets of the business before. This was sort of during the process of the privatization and probably between it getting sold for the very last,
Yeah,
yeah, it'd been bought by one company and before it got sold on to another, and seeing how some parts of that organization were more attuned to being privatized, and the culture was different. Whereas there was a big part of it as well, certainly from the electrical distribution side of things, which was very, very still had that mentality of a public sector company. It was quite interesting seeing those parts. And I guess one of the things was that the part that I worked for was it was a contracting organisation, and so they did have to compete against people out in the open market. So it's quite interesting to see that, and I think that probably kind of fed my interest in sales more than anything because
yeah, yeah,
I could see, you can't just do things and rely on that business then, and it's actually going out there and seeking it became something that I decided I wanted to do. So that then led back round to purely sales focused jobs really, but that gave me my background in the construction sector.
yeah.
So
And obviously it's giving you some really good background and grounding for what you're doing today with TICA. Really, you can speak to your members as such on a different level, can't you?
yeah, I mean, I think it's become important to do that, and exactly that. I think I've got a good background to see things from different perspectives,
Yeah,
and I don't think many of our members will know that I did work for a contracting organisation of a sort previously myself. So it's given me it's a certain a certain background. I think is quite useful, but it's that's one of the it's we are as a trade association, we are trying to be that focal point where we are both representing the needs of our members to that wider construction market, but also trying to interpret down and put it into language that a busy person running their own business can understand without getting too lost in the details. And
yeah,
sometimes that's not easy because you have to wear very different hats. And I can be in a British standards meeting talking about one page of a document for half an hour, or I can be like trying to give somebody the really quick overview of what they need to know,
yeah,
which is fun, but it's not always easy. I sometimes
yeah.
have to remember which hat I'm wearing.
And then from your point of view, you've got to be looking to be providing value, haven't you, to your members regarding
Yeah,
their membership.
yeah, and obviously that's what every trade association has to try and do. I would I would say where we're at now as a trade association is it really is a journey, and we've yes, we're always trying to add that value, but to a certain extent everything is happening because it needs to happen. And what I mean by that is from the point of view of the Building Safety Act and a drive towards competence. And actually, this is something that every trade association is having to do. Is how do you show that your members are the technically compliant, a capable contractor that can do that specialist role. And we're all having to do that in various facets of the
Mm.
construction market.
Yeah.
And actually that is what will add the greatest value for our members, is that we have a framework for thermal insulation. We understand what competence looks like in terms of skills, knowledge, experience, and behaviours. So we've mapped that out. We've been quite early to the party with that, Paul. And what we have to do now is try and bring our members along for the journey. It's actually quite difficult sometimes, because you can imagine where people saw trade associations maybe 20 years ago, and particularly before the Building Safety Act. It was uh, a powerful brand, a badge that you could place on your van and on your letterheads to say we're part of this club. And there's a social aspect to it and all the rest of it. A lot of it has changed. The reason I have a job with TICA is because there are so many things we've got to get right around the competent side of things, the
Yeah.
technical standards that we are now helping to write. And this is something that actually not everybody in the construction market wants for their trade. They don't necessarily want a big microscope held over it, but
No.
we know regardless of what we do as a trade association, that is going to happen. That is a key thing. Every tier one contractor wants to know effectively that uh, as they as they as they start building on their project, they are giving the contracts to a competent um, specialist contractor that can fulfill that function.
Mm.
And trade association membership's kind of a key part of that. How else do you prove it at this moment in time? It's very, very difficult. So we have to try and fill that function. It's not always easy, and there's a lot of work to do. But I think we're probably ahead of most in that respect.
Yeah. How many members do you currently have?
So it's about 60.
Right.
It does fluctuate. I'll be honest about that. And so
Yeah.
we probably I mean, the energy sector one is quite interesting, because we could start off with say half a dozen members, and then there are such big companies that then go and take over some of the other companies. You end up with one less every year. So actually, so that's challenging in itself. and
Yeah.
and I think we've now gone through the journey of some people who don't want the additional microscope being sort of held over them, as it were. Some people may have left the association. Actually, now we're just beginning to see that turning point where more people are joining because they understand what we're doing. They
Yeah.
understand that TICA gives them that ability to show to their clients that they are a capable specialist contractor.
Yeah.
And that is where I work with people like BISA and those other trade associations. We're doing a lot of work with the Institute of Refrigeration at the moment as well. And that's where that work really comes in, because it does validate it. We're all pulling together in the same direction. We're all trying to show what competence looks like. And that's quite important, because it's all right if our members can get that, if they can do whatever they need to do to show that, um, then the person appointing that specialist contractor still needs to understand what they're appointing and they're getting it right as well. So
Yeah.
all these kind of layers of conversation are happening. This is where it's building to. So yeah, this is what we're trying to do for members now, and it's the imperative is absolutely there. It has to be.
Yeah. Where do you see your challenges are? I know you've got organisations that are constantly changing and evolving. Do you have challenges that you foresee are there all the time? Like legislation, for instance, that must be constantly moving.
Yes, yeah, yeah. The the challenges I think are very similar to the other industries within the construction sector. The big challenge, which I think we've really, really taken head on, is that of recruitment and trying to ensure that there's a future for our industry.
Yeah.
So we have, unlike a lot of the sort of specialist construction trades, we actually have a specialist training centre. So we actually have a national training college in
Right.
Darlington. Why have we got that? Well, thermal insulation, although we talk about it a lot, and we know a lot of people who do talk about it, thankfully, and for the right reasons. thermal insulation, sometimes it's a bit of a forgotten trade. And the truth of it is that you're only going to get so many people looking at that trade. You're always going to need more to insulate the pipe work. You're going to need more people actually fitting the pipe work. You need people fitting the duct work. These are bigger trains that we are trades that we are aligning ourselves with,
Mm.
and so it's difficult enough for those other trades to try and have the um, that sort of communication with colleges and things like that to be able to make sure that there are enough apprenticeship places to feed their industry. So, as little small thermal insulation world, the only way we were going to do it is do it ourselves, and it's worked really, really successfully. So we've improved our apprenticeship numbers year upon year for the last since COVID. So the last 5 years our apprenticeship numbers keep increasing. We've now got more female apprentices than we have. I think we've got six currently on our books. So they're going through that sort of 18-month apprenticeship route.
Right.
You'd be lucky to get one every couple of years previously. So there's a lot of things we're doing. So that's a big challenge I think that we're winning with. Um, Challenges that are a struggle is certainly around the whole kind of adoption of uh, the um, the new legislation around competence and things like that. You know, all the building safety stuff, which is that we think we've done as much as we can without everybody else trying to catch up with us. It can be very it can be very frustrating if you're an outlier with all your competence framework already in place, because actually um, we we need to be recognised by the people in that contractual route then to say,
Yeah.
yeah, it needs to be a correctly carded individual to actually insulate on site. Are they checking those cards? Well, at the moment, there's not many trades that have got that all sorted, if you see what I mean. So that's a challenge for the industry, but we have to, regardless of how quickly we move, we can only move as quickly as everyone around us.
Yeah.
So,
And
but
did the
the
likes of Grenfell, that they obviously the facial cladding on buildings, which is insulation, has that
yeah.
impacted on your well, yes, definitely on your industry, but did that impact on your trade association as well?
I mean, certainly indirectly through the introduction of the Building Safety Act and everything it says around competence and organisational capabilities. But yes, I mean, you can imagine a lot of our associate members are also companies that operate within the structural insulation world
Yeah,
as well,
yeah,
and so. It would be wrong to say that it didn't have effects. I think one of the things, and Paul, to be honest, this is one of those kind of, I don't know, hypocrisies that really, I find really interesting. But for I think for the right reasons, people are now questioning things like reaction to fire of thermal insulation products. Absolutely, that is really important, and it's important in pipe insulation as well. And so, actually, there are products out there that people are now questioning whether they're suitable for certain applications.
mm,
We can offer guidance around what the standards say and what the minimum performance level should be in
yeah,
those scenarios. But actually, what we see then is I think we see a real focus on certain brands and materials, and then we see things like pre-insulated pipework suddenly appearing everywhere, and that's got a reaction to fire that wouldn't be as good as the products that everybody does get concerned about. And it
mm,
also wouldn't have back to our conversations, it wouldn't have the thermal performance at the thickness that it's actually been installed at to meet any of the requirements of BS 5422 or approved document L. And so these are big things to talk about, but everybody, I think, at the moment is still focusing on what that kind of headline thing is and actually not looking at the detail of things. So that is a challenge in itself as well.
yeah. Can I put another curveball in? Sorry about this.
And yeah,
Asbestos,
no worries. This is
as
yeah.
asbestos. Where does asbestos now fit into this? Because obviously some of the older buildings had significant amounts of asbestos on the pipe. I used to work at Bradwell Nuclear Power Station, and we basically more or less had to strip all our boilers and all our pipe
Oh
work
yeah.
out because of the asbestos.
Yes, yeah, yeah. So there is still a lot of asbestos around, of course,
More than
and
we
it
want it
needs to
to
be.
be, obviously.
Yeah, and I think there's maybe, yeah, we're nowhere near the end point there. We might be at a point where we're looking at smaller scenarios in some cases, but
Yeah.
it's that journey is still, there's a long way to go. And it's a similar conversation, I think, to the one with thermal insulation as well. That everybody needs to be correctly carded and competent to
Mm.
work around asbestos. Clearly, what you do have, which is maybe something that is, I think it helps with the clarity of the fact that it's a legislated situation, so the HSE can can go and rock up on site and see what's going on and audit things, and everything has to be correctly audited and in place. Um, TICA actually have an asbestos division as well, so an
All right.
asbestos abatement and yeah, disposal division as well. So
Right.
and that's a lot of that is because traditionally our members on the industrial side would that they would have to do both, and they were coming
Yeah.
across asbestos on the sites they're working at. So it was absolutely a key thing. So yeah, and in fact we've kind of built from there. Our asbestos ACAD division is, yeah, it's got more members than the TICA one. To be fair,
Right.
it's a slightly different setup, and but yeah, it is a really important thing. And
Yeah.
so yeah, yeah, by the fact that we have a division covering that separately within TICA probably shows we take it very seriously.
And it's an
Yeah.
important process, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not one I get directly involved with, as you could probably tell. It's not my
No, no,
it's
but
not my
you
day-to-day
answered it
thingy.
very
But
well. You've answered it very well.
yeah,
Can I
I
can I ask you as
yeah,
well? And I
yeah.
vaguely remember from our conversations, you talked about this phrase, "the proof is on the roof." Where,
Yes,
what can you tell us about that? Is there a story behind that?
yes, yeah. There is. So what I have been wanting to do for a while, Paul, is to try and get some kind of government focus on the sheer amount of badly or non-insulated pipework that exists both on our roof spaces and in our plant rooms. Now, the proof is on the roof came from a conversation with a gentleman called Lawrence Leask, who I was doing some work with the IOR, and sorry, that's the Institute of Refrigeration. And it's quite an interesting thing, really, but TICA members don't get involved with typically with insulating commercial VRV lines, for example. Those sort of commercial refrigeration lines tend to be done with flexible foams and tend to be done by the refrigeration market. It's not such a skill that
Hmm.
requires cutting and measuring of insulation. But when we came across this, we realised it's two sides of the same coin, which is that regardless of whether this is flexible insulation or refrigerant pipe, or whether it's sort of more sort of traditional HVAC services with the chilled and heating pipes and all the rest of it. There is so much stuff on the roof space that has been left and never inspected, and it's been left to rust basically.
Right.
And what we want to do is get people to actually start getting up on the roof and having a look and actually doing something about it. Um, and why? Well, clearly there's an energy saving angle to this, which is if it's badly insulated, we're going to be losing more heat.
Mm.
And there's a kind of an embodied carbon message to this as well, which is if you don't do that preventative maintenance and that inspection routine, and you start missing things, it adds up. The hole gets bigger and bigger and bigger until you might have an issue of, say, corrosion under insulation on your pipe work. All of a sudden, then you're not just replacing a bit of insulation and a bit of cladding, you're replacing the whole system.
Yeah.
So why are we not getting up on the roof and looking at that on a regular basis and making sure we don't fall into those holes? So the proof is on the roof is if you like, a bit of the fun sort of, nice and easy sort of little
Yeah.
poetic pun, as it were, to sort of throw out there, but it's actually to back up a serious message to government that they should be incentivizing some of this and actually making
Yeah.
sure it happens. And I want that as kind of that light-hearted backup to a very serious message that I'm trying to deliver. It's not easy. It's not easy to get that message delivered, but we're trying.
Yeah. Do you know, while you're talking about the roofs and things, there's two things that are in my head regarding. I'd like to advise you as the trade association. You think I'm crazy, I know.
Right.
So first of all, I think there's a tool out there which is the thermographic camera, which I
Yes.
think should play a very big part with today's industry, especially in the insulation industry, because either you take pictures after you've done the installation or you use that to do
Yeah.
your maintenance. I think that the thermographic camera for me plays quite a big part of what we do today. That's one
Agreed.
area of enhancement for energy management. And the second area is when we're doing this lagging, we need to consider the maintenance of it. Now, the lagging always gets put, that's why me and British were having a great conversation about all the pipe work gets done right up until the valve and then they ignore the rest of it and they don't.
Yeah.
Why can't, is there going to be some sort of joined up conversation going forward? Is that on the radar or not?
Absolutely. This is a big part of what we're trying to do. We're trying to have those conversations. We are trying to join up all that thinking effectively. As you know, with yeah, when you had Pritesh from T&M, when he was talking to you, then I think there's a growing recognition that jacketing valves is quite an important thing to do. I
Yeah,
think, roughly speaking, the general rule of thumb is that one uninsulated valve is equivalent to 1 meter of uninsulated pipe.
yeah,
And you think of all the gaps in the system that get left. So that's a really important thing. And when I look at where our industry is, what I want some of our members to start thinking about is they don't need to be beholden to the new build scenario all the time. They don't have to be the final guy on site, following the duct work and everybody
yeah,
else,
yeah,
and literally doing the lagging trade on site. Being the last ones there. Actually, there's a huge business potential for actually going and either following in an energy inspector and following on from that and actually doing that remedial works, or indeed with things like tip check, there is now a means where a thermal insulator can, just from that thermal insulation perspective, can do everything that you're saying there, the
yeah,
thermal imaging, the exact calculations, even to the point where you can reference the new European standards for energy ratings on pipe insulation and say, right, this is what you've got. All of these uninsulated valves and flanges in this plant room. This adds up to so much carbon. This adds up to effectively, here's your value that you're losing every year by not insulating it correctly, and effectively, here's your price for getting that done.
yeah,
And actually, the return on investment, the actual payback period, a lot of the time is weeks.
yeah.
Even on a,
It is, yeah,
yeah. I mean, we know this, don't we? This is what we talk about, and not everybody seems to want to sort of follow us, into looking at this in that detail. But it's really important.
yeah,
I did a study with it was uh, a company in the sort of the leisure industry. They've got a big plant room, and they had their premises wasn't operating 24/7, but 5 days of the week, and even with those reduced hours, the turnaround was little over a year just in terms of insulating
yeah.
all the valves. It's only an LTHW system operating about 75 degrees.
Mm.
Even then, it can be made. It can be made, to work very quickly. But you think all the hospitals out there where operating 24/7, and they haven't even looked at it.
Yeah.
It is a
When I'll
yeah,
give you some
so
history. When I
disappointed.
used to do energy assessments probably 10 years ago, I would have said nearly 100% of those plant rooms I reviewed wouldn't have the valve wraps, the pump wraps, or any of the areas covered. We
Yeah,
have seen an improvement on that, but I would only say probably 30% of that has now improved. We've still
yeah,
got the 70% that needs that. And I think there's a big opportunity for organizations to be reducing their carbon footprint, but there's also an opportunity for maintenance of these systems to be reviewed. Or,
yeah,
you know, I know what happens is the price of the contract, it gets managed out, doesn't it? All the nice
yeah.
stuff, unfortunately. But it's
It
such a
does. It does.
the economics of that is so wrong, isn't it?
It is. I mean, we see this all the time, and this is where I'm trying to. I can't say I've got everything how I would like it yet, but it's a real frustration to me that we have these conversations. You've got this sort of sometimes quite convoluted contractual route, and at the end of it, somebody has been asked to insulate the heating and the chilled services in this office block, or the heating services in this residential block, or whatever it is, and just right cheapest price, get it
Yeah,
done. And then it can be frustrating because you can see how everything that is good for the client, for the operator of the building, for the people living and working in those buildings, everything that is good is slowly pushed out.
yeah,
And you see things like just a thickness of insulation. You
yeah,
got options there. You can double the thickness, and the payback time. Yeah, you pay a bit more to do that at the beginning, but the payback time will be, it might be a couple of years, but
yeah.
you want those buildings operating for 25 years at least,
This is
don't
the
you?
this
The
is the problem
services in
we
them. So
this is the problem where you've got a capex. They're trying to reduce the capex down, but not
mm,
understanding that the opex is going to be impacted by it. Um,
yeah,
and then someone comes along and said, "Oh, by the way, your operational costs are going to be higher because of this." So then they have to go and probably they then put their additional installation in via a maintenance contract. So there is
yeah,
a cost saving there basically on the capex in originally. But going forward, I think it'd be nice to address all the problems from day one. Personally,
yes. I agree, and where I see this is what I'm trying to encourage. We did a presentation to Sibsy recently, so we're trying to reach out
right?
uh, to the designers and the specifiers, and to say, okay, let's get this right now for all future projects. Let's
Hmm.
really look at what. Don't just quote a British standard and say do it to that, because nobody will really know which table to look at, and they'll go for the one that's the cheapest table to
Yeah,
basically comply with. I don't know about the client again, ultimately, or
yeah,
certainly the people living in those buildings. So let's get that right from day one. But secondly, let's start looking at everything that's there, all of that legacy of badly insulated pipework. There's an incredible amount of it. And I
yeah.
think that's enough to keep a workforce of thermal insulators very busy for the next couple of decades.
I
But we
think
need
so.
to look at it.
Yeah.
We absolutely do.
Well,
Yeah.
Chris, as I'm talking and I'm opening up the can for you, and I do apologise for the curveballs,
Oh,
but
it's all right. It's all right.
there's some really good conversation in it, and I think it's the beginning of probably many. And we're not just a one-stop shop conversation here. We're more than
Mhm.
happy for you to come back, but it's come to that time where I'd like to ask another question. I know you've been very open with my curveballs, but is there anything you can give to our industry today? Because there's a lot of energy experts listen to this, and newcomers coming into our industry. Is there anything you can give to our industry today as a like a takeaway, as some experience conversation?
So, I mean, to give in terms of just things for people to think about is absolutely get up on that roof and have a look at what you've got.
Yeah,
And absolutely the same thing with the plant rooms as well. Don't be afraid to really address that and see what there is. There's some really really quick wins. Some
yeah,
of it can be overly complex, things like pipe supports when once it's already installed, but some quick, easy wins with things like valve jackets. So I
Yeah.
would encourage people to look at those. What we're trying to do for the rest of the industry, and I think something that we will be, I think it is it giving back, but it's certainly the right thing to do. Is looking at that whole organisational competence, and we are very much in the middle of setting up a technical audit scheme. So we can say to everybody appointing thermal insulators, we can say our members have been technically audited. They've had an
Yeah.
on-site survey and things like that. Now, at the moment, is anybody asking us to do that? Probably not, but it feels like the right thing to do
Yeah. Totally.
because how are those sort of tier one and tier two contractors going to be able to prove that they have put all of their specialist subcontractor packages out to the right people? So I think there's that, but effectively, a lot of what we do, webinars and talks and things like that, we actually want the whole industry to be listening.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I think that's kind of giving, and
Yeah. 100%.
we're doing talks and things like that. We Anybody that wants to talk about thermal insulation, I'm happy to talk to them about it. I just wish there were more people who did.
Yeah. It's funny because I interviewed British. It took me a long time to find a specific person to talk about. And within seconds, obviously, he's come on. You've come to me, which is brilliant because this is the idea of
Yeah, yeah,
this network. We've got these energy experts around, we're all experts in our own field, but we should all collaborate and work together. And it's brilliant you've come on today to share your story and the fact that we now know there's an individual and there's an organisation that's actually supporting the likes of Pritesh, which is fantastic to know that it's not just us as energy experts trying to, oh, we need lag in there, we need the valve. To know now that there's legislation and there's design and there's work behind the scene. I do like the proof is on the roof,
yeah,
stroke in the basement or in the
yeah,
plant
yeah.
rooms, which you did clarify. So, yeah, no, I like that.
No, that's good. Thank you. Yeah, and I think that's something we do want to. I think that's a way of, yeah, getting the message out there and hopefully
Yeah,
supporting people with that, and in turn, hopefully, it helps people to support us because the more people that start talking about this, the more somebody in government is likely to listen, and
exactly.
we can start talking about the complexities. Maybe they have to be complex, but maybe we can make it simpler than government realise and just get this done. It
It
just
is
needs
it's a
some kind of
very
incentive.
simple solution, isn't it?
Yeah.
Everything gets overcomplicated, as we know. Yeah,
Well, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how you are delivering that heat or that cooling to that building. Then, if you can stop that heat transfer from point A to point B through insulating those pipes and those ducts as effectively as you can, then that's a fairly agnostic thing to do
yeah,
effectively.
yeah.
So we don't have to get involved in heat pumps versus CHP or whatever it might be, and let's just get those basics right. And I would say for industrial clients, this is a really big thing. Sometimes it's difficult to know what to do in that sense from a large manufacturing company that maybe heat pumps is not the right technology for them, and
Yeah.
that there are some really interesting things that can be done with heat recovery, of course. But essentially, get the basics right with insulate everything you got as well as you can. You might find that's the biggest single thing you could do.
Yeah, 100%. So, Chris,
Yeah,
thank you very much for coming today. Thank you, more importantly, for
yeah.
putting TICA on the map and on our radar. I really appreciate that. It's been a really interesting story. And I'm not just saying this, I can see there's going to be some other things and some collaboration with our network and yourselves going forward. I think there's some really good opportunities for us to collaborate further. So, Chris, thank you very much for coming today.
Thank you for your time. It's really appreciated, Paul. You have a
Brilliant.
good evening.
And lastly, you and your
Yeah.
family stay safe in these times.
Thank you very much, sir, and same to you and yours.
Thank you to my guest for joining me today on Energy Speaks Back. I'm very proud and humbled to have the opportunity to interview energy experts from around the world and I hope you found today's episodes of value. Don't forget to listen to the previous episodes because they are full of insights to help you make a real impact on energy efficiency. And remember, tiny changes that we make today can bring us profound savings in the future. Together, we can drive change and make a difference. That leaves me with one more thing to say. Please, you and your family, be safe in these times.